Now, all can see. This is the hour of the Forsaken.
Hey, what's up everyone? Foxy here, and today we're going to be talking about Righteous Fire, but in the form of poison in Last Epoch. Now, for those who don't know, Righteous Fire is a big circle of fiery death in Path of Exile. It's a great fun build. You run at the enemies, everyone explodes, everyone has a great time, except for the enemies. Except here in Last Epoch, we're going to be throwing in ailments, we're going to be throwing curses, and we're going to be using poison instead of fire. Well, maybe a little bit of fire, we'll see. But this build should be really good for the early game. I tried it in 1.1 without the Righteous Fire and all the idols that are coming in the new expansion or league or season or whatever the hell they're calling it now. And therefore, I'm pretty certain that this is going to be a good early game build and potentially can push into mid to end game depending on how we get on. And if people like this guide, I will be building those guys as well. So let's get into it straight away. So Aura of Decay is our main ability here. Is the big circle of death that we're going to be using first. And what we're going to do here is basically look to stack poison as quick as possible using ailment frequency. We're going to be adding plague to the mixture as well, which just is more poison effectiveness, more poison, more fun. And we're going to throw in a curse just for a little laugh here. Mark for death, everyone loves that. And then also we're going to use Soul Feast just as a little defensive layer to get ward as we start killing things. Now, one spicy thing to mention here about this build is if you go for Icarian Poison, it's good fun, but you're going to have a bad time after a while because this will continually stack more and more poisons quicker and quicker on you until you explode. So if you go for this build, you're going to want to build a lot of health regen here if you use this node to counter that for as long as possible, but you will have to toggle it on and off. For those who don't like doing that, you can always spec out of this node and just go down a safer node like Corruption and Death Bloom, which just add more and more poison or add more stacks of Mark for Death. And if you get enough health regen at that point, you probably won't ever have to toggle off Aura of Decay by the end game. So nice comfy build as you get stronger. How are we going to support this though? This isn't that much poison for now. So what we're going to do is bring in some damage. Fire Chthonic Fissure. We're going to convert all of the fire stacks here. So this is like Ignite Chance, the ability to spread Ignite. We're going to convert that to poison. More poison, more fun. And we're also going to throw in acid skin here. Another curse. You know, curses are always fun. And this is just a great fun build, by the way. I know I keep saying it's fun, but honestly, the amount of ailments you can stack with this build is insane. And we're going to just keep stacking the curses as we go on. You're going to see it here. Worthy mentions here is other ailment duration. You want to spread the duration as much as possible because you're going to be stacking a lot of ailments. And the longer they're on, the better, because the more stacks you'll get, which will then trigger our Ignite Overload and our Damned Overload later. And that is what triggers the Downfall of the Righteous' Witchfire secondary circle of death. So we've got 2 circles of death for double the fun. Also, worthy of mention here is this Chaotic Rupture and this Stygian Current. Basically, we're going to be proccing our Chaos Bolts off the top of our Chthonic Fissure without having to cast them. And with a bit of careful mana saving here, it's going to then use our Chaos Bolt tree, which is then going to proc other stuff. So let's move on to Chaos Bolt. And don't worry about the one unspent point. I don't know where that's come from, but you know, don't worry about it. Don't look at it. Ignore it. I'm sure we can put a point somewhere here if needed. So this basically how this one's going to work is we're going to add yet another curse in. This is Bone Curse. This is yet another curse that's going to stack other damages you're going to see later in the passive tree and various other skills that proc off curse damage. So for example here, we're going to gain more health based off our curses. We're going to gain more mana based off our curses. And this is a common theme, which is why we're stacking more and more curses as well. Not only for damage, but for utility as well. And this is where we're going to get most of our Ignite stacks, right, for the Downfall of the Righteous. This Chaotic Bolt will be stacking Ignites on them. We're also going to be stacking Ignites because we have Ignite Chance on our passive tree as well. And in Last Epoch, if you have a chance to put an ailment on, basically any spell hit will put that ailment on, which is great fun. So we're going to have a lot of Ignite in this build. We're going to have a lot of Damned in this build. And that's going to trigger that the Downfall of the Righteous, which is going to do another big load of DPS as mentioned earlier. Then we're going to move on to Wandering Spirits. Wandering Spirits is just basically a tool to apply more poison dots quicker for us. It also does more damage to curse enemies and damned enemies, which is worthy to mention. This lane here basically allows us to fire Basically, each of the wandering spirits go pew 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 pew, and a load of poison just goes on everyone. And we just make it in a larger radius. This is probably the most underwhelming skill out of all the 4, but it just helps us scale the stacks of poison. We want as much poison as quick as possible on our enemies. And then finally, Transplant's going to bring in our Bone Curse yet again. So we're going to get Bone Curse as we hit the enemy. We're going to do more damage and get more health based on Cursed. You can see how the synergy is working now. You're seeing the matrix now. We're going to get a little bit of haste off this node. It's not a big deal. A bit of frenzy as well. We're going to have a dog barking in the background. Don't know if you hear that. She's going to join in. And we're going to also get a bit of bone armor here as well. So bone armor is going to give us a little more of a defensive layer as well, because our defensive layer is going to be a bit funky, let's say, in this build, because we're going to rely on ward generated by our passive tree and killing of enemies, health regen off our gear and off our passive tree to counteract the Aura of Decay. And then we're just going to try to throw in a few other defensive layers as well on top, just to keep ourselves going, really. So moving on to the passive tree. Actually, before I go into the passive tree, people see lots of uniques and go, ugh, and I am one of those people as well. However, I have done this for a good reason. So on poison builds, there is it's quite difficult to scale poison. You can't really scale the base damage of the poison. You've got to scale the increased and more off the base. So a lot of these items are kind of useful to help with certain things. So Rot Mind is going to increase your damage over time skills. Bear in mind, Aura of Decay is not a spell. Therefore, doesn't get a +1, sadly, from this. However, all our other spells do that are over time. Our damage over time spells also get more poison damage. We take less over time damage, which is really important for Decay, because we're going to explode ourselves if we're not careful. And we also leech health back from poison. And we also get a big area of effect where that matters. We're going to use this new necklace from the new expansion. This is going to give us ward per second for each curse affecting you. And it's also going to inflict acid skin when we do Bone Curse. Now, if you remember, we're going to do Bone Curse through our Transplant skill. And yeah, it's going to also increase our poison damage, some of our resistances, just a nice necklace, really. Bit of physical resistance as well there. This one's going to be spicy. This is kind of mandatory just because the fact that the more negative ailments we have on the target, the more spell damage we're going to do. This alone puts 5 different ailments on the enemy. We're going to have a ton of other ailments as well, so we're going to hit that 8 max that's mentioned. So that's nice. It's also going to reduce the cost of our spell skills, which is going to be big for when we're proccing Chaos Bolts. Gives us a little bit of spell damage on that as well, so no harm. And there's also something funky I want to show you guys in the new Weaver tree that you can use Mad Alchemist Ladle with. This one, somewhat underwhelming, gives us a chance to apply poison on hit, more poison spell skills. This does apply to our spells, not our Decay again, sadly, but again, it reflects a bit of damage, increases our poison damage. This can easily be swapped out for a really good Exalt. And the reason I haven't put lots of Exalts in here is because I wanted to put the Chase uniques in so that you can then slam the legendaries on top as you see fit. And quite a lot of these are necessary to make the build work. So the Mad Alchemist Ladle isn't necessary, but really helps. This one is you kind of really do want to use this. And this is the downfall of the Righteous, which is what I was talking about. This is new to 1.2. It's going to give us a little bit of health leech. It's going to give us increased health. It's going to give us increased curse damage. But more importantly, we're going to get this Witch Fire that does 600 necrotic damage and fire damage over 12 seconds. This is going to be big damage. We're going to proc this using what I've mentioned earlier, our Ignite Overload, Damned Overload. And it's going to scale off our curses as well. So lots of fun there. This one, again, you could probably swap it out. I think it's nice it's got a lot of damage over time increased. It also applies Doom, which is just yet another thing to bully our enemies with. It gives us haste, and it also reduces our movement speed, which then also procs our Bone Curse. And a bit of Ward Decay threshold as well. There is a pair of gloves called Salt in the Wound that you could potentially use. They're quite rare. I think Eternal Gauntlets or something similar to this with just stacking increased damage over time. If you don't want to go the armor routes, just put ward, health, fill in your resistances, but mainly you want to look at dot damage and poison damage as our main damage levers. Up here we've got our Profane Crown. This is going to increase our area of effects, so that's going to increase our Aura of Decay even bigger. We're also going to get more damage, curse damage, health regen. And it's worth bearing in mind, because we haven't been able to test this in the new world, this build is really gut-based. And what I mean by gut-based is, as you start doing this build, you're going to find that your Aura of Decay just keeps kicking your ass, right? You're going to have to keep increasing your health regen until it feels comfy. And there's a balancing act with this build where you try to increase your offense without taking yourself out. And there's a bit of juggling here, and it makes it very hard to say exactly what gear you want. It's very much based on feel, but the pillars that you can use to decide if you're doing it right is offense skill, dot damage, poison damage, spell damage, mainly dot damage if you can. And then on your defensive side, you want to be looking for ward retention, ward threshold, a bit of health, and our passive tree is also bringing in ward and health as well on top. I put in the Woven. It's kind of nice. It just gets rid of the worry about critical strikes. You can't be critical striked. You've got increased leech, which you're going to get from the passive tree, so that's important. So this is just a nice unique to have to slam some legendaries on top. And then here we have Chainsaw Aurus. Again, this is going to give you even more ward, and it's basically to increase your damage and get more ward. Okay, without further ado, we're going to go on to our blessings. This basically, the important bits here is increased poison damage. You can then put on whatever you really feel like here. I like Frailty, it's just another ailment to chuck on. I've gone for Void Resistance here. I've gone for Ailment Shard Drop here for obvious reasons. Cold Resistance, increased health regen, increased glove drop rate, increased Adorned, and increased one drop, which is for our Mad Alchemist Ladle to try and get some really nice LP on that. And then skill shot. So, I mean, a lot of this is just flex it to see where the gaps in your gear are. There's no real prescription here for me, other than probably poison damage. The rest is basically as you see fit. Don't worry too much about what you're seeing here on the defenses. A lot of it's going to come from the passive tree, and it doesn't really calculate this in the calculations very well. The only thing is worth noticing is you want to get as much damage over time taken reduced, so you survive the Aura of Decay. So moving on to our idols. What we want to do here is we want to get these two juicy ones here, which increases poison damage while Aura of Decay is active. Now, obviously, we are going to want to keep this active as long as possible, if not continuously. It also does a little less damage over time taken, which is going to keep us alive a bit longer. We've got a little bit of mana regen, movement speed, increased damage. These kind of other ones we can play with a little bit to fit the build, but the top two are important. We've also got a bit of Poison Pen. Now, I can't understate how important Poison Penetration is for a Poison build. It's quite a hard thing to find. And we're also going to get a bit of spell damage on top and increase spell damage to increase the base of spell damage, and then have an increased effect of that spell damage. I've said spell damage way too many times in a row now. Now, moving on here, we've got increased damage over time, less damage taken, increased poison damage, all self-explanatory. And this one is going to give us the chance to apply Plague on hit. Plague, as mentioned earlier, spreads out, gives poison to other enemies around them, and also increases the effectiveness of poison. And it also increases the poison pen of that plague, which is pretty nice. And then I've thrown on increased poison duration. The longer the stacks last, the easier it is to build stacks, so that's really important. And a bit of ward decay threshold and ward per second for defenses. This one down here is going to give us a little bit more ignite duration and poison duration, increased damage over time, and less damage over time taken. And arguably, there is maybe a case to switch these two out if you don't need these to grab this, as this is quite a nice idol, but you can kind of mix and match these a little bit, focusing around poison penetration, poison damage, duration, all that good stuff. Moving on to the passives, we're not going to dwell too long on here, we're just going to call out the key areas. So here we just have some increased damage, which is a very powerful damage node, but it comes with health drained per second. We're going to want to use the Crimson Gluttony to increase our health regen, which is really going to help keep us going with the Aura of Decay and also reduce the health drain of this node. Now these two you can play around with. If you're tanky enough, you can reduce this and increase this. It gives you some levers to play with there. This one's good. This gives us the damn chance that we need for the overload, which we'll talk about in a second. This one's just chance to poison more enemies, and this is a bit more of a defensive layer here. The Warlock tree is the exciting one for us. What we're going to want here is to get to the Chains of Ruin and the Infernal Lash. This gives us Ignite and Damned Overload, which then triggers the downfall of the Righteous Circle of Death. And then we take this node. This should have 5 points in, by the way. I've just noticed for some reason it's gone. But you want to get 5 points of this just to get that more damage multiplier, which is big. And I've also noticed this should say 5 as well. Basically, this then gives us Withering on hit, which is yet another thing to give to our enemies as a treat. And it also reduces the damage taken. This one here is just get Anguish as a yet another curse to put on the enemy. You've got to collect them all. Or, well, actually, they've got to collect them all. We're giving them away. And then here we've got some defensive nodes here to get a bit more armor per curse and less damage taken per curse. So this is why we're stacking curses, for all these juicy synergies. Bit more ward decay as well, threshold that is, and ward gained on kill. And the rest is mainly like poison, poison overload duration as well. So we're going to have 3 overloads in this build. We're going to have poison overload, ignite overload, and damned overload. And yeah, that's gonna be good. The enemy are not gonna like this. And then finally on the Lich Tree or the Lychee, whatever you want to call it, spell damage leached as health. This is again more defenses, increased damage over time, and increased poison damage. But more importantly, duration. As I've said, duration equals more stacks. More stacks equal more damage, and to some point, duration actually starts to become more important than damage. So that's the passive tree here. As I say, I'm going to be writing a build guide that's going to go into more detail on this. And also you can just, I read the comments, just comment if you have any questions. If you think I'm an idiot, you can also say that, that's fine too. And we'll see how this build goes. Is there anything else I need to talk about? The Weaver tree. So, totally scripted this, all of it. I've just randomly guessed what's good. I've just gone for what I like. The only thing that's, I think, a little bit big brain here is this node here, which is a bit cheeky. The number of items in the pile is equal to the number of affixes on the item. Well, my friends, we have this item. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 affixes. I don't know if the implicits count. I don't think they do. So bare minimum, we're going to get 8 items drop on this. So I think this might be a little bit of a cheese, as we're going to be using this in our build anyway. Thought I'd throw it in for a bit of a laugh. So finally, to wrap up, basically just some tips and tricks or things to note. This, as I said, hasn't been tested in 1.2 yet, but I do believe with this lovely downfall of the Righteous and these cracking new idols, we should be seeing some really nice DPS, at least in the early game. And I'm hoping we can scale this further with the ailments to do some higher level corruptions. I'm going to see how it goes. If it absolutely pops off, I'll be looking to do a sort of mid to end game guide if people are interested. I've got a build guide that I'll link in the YouTube as well. And just of note, early game, this when you don't have much gear, this is going to feel a little bit rough with the Aura of Decay. You're going to have to toggle it on and off. That gets a lot better as you get more gear, a bit more health regen. You can start balancing that out, and you get to the point where you don't really need to turn off Aura of Decay at all, except when the stacks get really high. So don't worry about it if it feels a little bit rough at the beginning. It gets in there. It gets good. So don't worry. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm going to be looking to do more videos on Last Epoch as well. If you enjoyed this, please do give me a like and subscribe. And remember, folks, try not to bring about your own demise. See ya.